A week later, a check arrived in my mail. It was for $1,000. In the memo line, Tom had written installment one of four. It was a silent admission of liability, a white flag. Called Miss Albright and told her the family was beginning to pay for the damages. She was pleased. This strengthens your position with your client immensely. She'd said, it shows you're taking every possible step with her help. I was able to negotiate a new deadline with my client. I had to accept a significant reduction in my fee, but the threat of a lawsuit was officially withdrawn. The professional crisis was averted. A few weeks after that, Jessica called me. Hi, she said, her voice small. Hi, I replied. I was wondering if you wanted to get coffee / just us. We met at a neutral cafe, halfway between our two worlds. It was awkward. We ordered our drinks and stirred them in silence for a full minute. I'm sorry, she said finally, looking down at her cup, about the laptop / about everything. You were right. I was overwhelmed and I was defensive and I wasn't listening. I'm sorry. I'm sorry too, I heard myself say, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. The email, the list. It was a low blow. It was born of anger, and I shouldn't have sent it. My point may have been valid, but my method was cruel. She looked up, a flicker of the old Jessica in her eyes. It was a little cruel. She agreed, a small smile playing on her lips. Hall of Fame level, according to my therapist. You're seeing a therapist? I asked, surprised. She nodded .. And I signed Lily up for one. Two, and Tom and I are taking one of those online parenting courses. The one from your list. Actually, the one about authoritative parenting. She rolled her eyes, but there was no heat in it. We talked for an hour. Really talked. For the first time in years. She told me about the crushing pressure she felt to be a perfect mother and how my seemingly perfect life made her feel like a failure. I told her about the intense loneliness of my freelance life and how her chaotic, love-filled home sometimes made me feel like I was missing out on something essential. It wasn't a magical fix. Our relationship was still a bruised, tender thing, but it was more honest than it had been in a decade. We were no longer playing the roles of the perfect sister and the messy sister. We were just Kate and Jess, two very different women, bound by a shared history, trying to find their way back to each other. As I walked home, I thought about the whole ordeal. I had won. I supposed I got the money, I got the admission of guilt, but it felt like a hollow victory. I had set out to prove a point about logic and consequences, to demand the respect I felt I was owed. But I had learned that logic without compassion is just a weapon, and respect, real respect, isn't something you can demand or invoice. It has to be earned. On both sides, my life was still orderly. My new laptop was just as fast, my new manuscript just as clean, but something inside me had shifted. I was a little less certain, a little less rigid, a little more open to the messy, unpredictable, and deeply illogical business of being human and of being a sister. Catherine, he said, his voice heavy, this has gone on long enough. Your mother is a wreck. Jessica is furious. You need to put a stop to this. I need to put a stop to this. I asked, incredulous. I'm not the one who started. Family is not about who started what, he said, a familiar paternal weariness in his tone. It's about getting through things together. You're tearing this family apart over a piece of machinery. It's not about the machinery anymore, Dad, I said, my voice shaking with a sudden, raw anger. It's about the fact that your other daughter and her husband think so little of me that they would let me take a massive financial and professional hit for something their child did. It's about the fact that you and Mom are so deep in denial about their failures as parents that you're willing to make me the villain. It's about respect, a concept that no one in this family seems to apply to me. That's not true, isn't it? I interrupted. Did you call Jessica and tell her to pay the bill? Did you offer to lend her the money to do it? Or did you just call me and tell me to forgive and forget? He was silent, and his silence was the answer. I have to go, Dad, I said, a profound sadness settling over me. ... I have to get back to work. I have a lawsuit to avoid. I ended the call. I felt a deep, aching loneliness. I had a family, a mother, a father, a sister, but in this moment, when I needed them most, I was utterly, completely on my own. The intervention was my mother's idea. She called it a family dinner to clear the air. I knew what it was. It was a courtroom where I was the defendant, and they were the judges, jury, and prosecution. My initial instinct was to refuse. I had nothing left to say to them. But then I thought about Ms. Albright's advice. Document everything. What could be better documentation than a final face-to-face confrontation where they would, no doubt, double down on their position? And another, more vulnerable part of me, a part one hated to admit existed, wanted to see them, wanted to look them in the eye and make them understand the full scope of the damage they had inflicted. I'll come, I told my mother, on one condition. We do it at my apartment, my turf. She agreed, a little too readily. I spent the day before the dinner preparing for battle. I reread all the texts and emails. I printed a copy of the letter from my client's lawyer. I wrote down a list of talking points. A habit from my editing work, I wanted my arguments to be precise, logical, and irrefutable. But as I was preparing my arsenal of facts, I stumbled across a folder of old photos on a backup drive. There was one of me and Jessica as kids, maybe 10 and 8 years old. I had my arm around her, and we were both grinning. A pair of buck-toothed, scabby-kneed sisters. We were a team back then. I was the serious, responsible older sister. She was the funny, charming, slightly wild one. We balanced each other. When had that changed? When had responsible curdled into judgmental in her eyes? When had charming become irresponsible in mine? There wasn't a single moment. It was a slow drift, a gradual erosion of intimacy caused by time, distance, and fundamentally different life choices. I had built a life of quiet order, and she had built one of chaotic love, and we had both come to resent the other's choices. Seeing them as an implicit criticism of our own, the anger I had been nursing for weeks was suddenly complicated by a profound wave of sadness. I wasn't just mourning a laptop. I was mourning the loss of my sister, the sister I had before. Mortgages and husbands and children and all the other messy complications of adult life got in the way. I hated that I missed her. I hated the weakness of it, but there it was, the night of the dinner. I was a bundle of nerves. I had ordered catering, not wanting to give them any other reason to criticize me. As they arrived, the tension was so thick I could taste it. My mother and father looked grim. Tom had his arm around Jessica, who looked pale and defiant. She refused to meet my eyes. We sat down at my dining room table. The silence was deafening. My father, ever the patriarch, cleared his throat. Catherine, he began, we are all here because we love each other, and we need to find a way to move past this ugliness. I agree, I said, my voice steady, and I believe the way to move past it is for Jessica and Tom to pay the $4,000 invoice I sent them 2 weeks ago. So much for clearing the air. Jessica let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. ... We are not paying you $4,000. Kate, it's absurd. We're here to get an apology from you for that disgusting email. An apology? I stared at her. An apology for what? For asking you to be accountable for your child's actions? You called me a bad mother? She cried, her voice rising. You have no right. I never used those words, I said. Calmly. ... I sent you a list of resources, A logical, practical solution to an observable problem. A problem? Tom jumped in, his face red. Our daughter having feelings is a problem to you? Your daughter destroying a $3,000 laptop in a fit of rage is a problem to me? Yes, I shot back. And it's also about to be a major problem for my client, who is now threatening to sue me for breach of contract. I took the letter from my client's lawyer out of my bag and slid it onto the center of the table. This is what that fit of rage has cost me. This is the consequence. This is not about a piece of machinery anymore, Dad. This is about my career. A career that you all seem to have very little respect for, but this is the reality. So, no, I will not be apologizing, and yes, I expect you to pay for the damages. All of them. The room fell silent as my father picked up the letter and read it. His face went pale. He passed it to Tom, whose blustering bravado seemed to evaporate as he scanned the page. Jessica just stared at it, her eyes wide. I didn't know. She whispered ... I didn't know it was this serious. Of course you didn't, I said, the bitterness rising in my throat, because you never asked. You never once stopped to think about how this might affect me. You were too busy defending your precious, perfect child and feeling sorry for yourselves. That's not fair. Jessica sobbed, the tears finally coming. You think this is easy for me? You think I don't know Lily is difficult? I'm with her 24 hours a day. I'm exhausted. I try my best, and it's never good enough. Especially not for you. You stand there with your perfect life and your perfect apartment, judging me. You've been judging me my whole life. The dam broke. Years of unspoken resentment, of sibling rivalry, of perceived slights and quiet hurts, all came pouring out. It was ugly ... It was raw, and it was, in its own terrible way, honest ... I don't think I'm perfect, I said, my own voice breaking. I'm lonely, I'm stressed, and right now, I'm terrified of losing a client who trusts me. I needed my family. I needed my sister. And you weren't there. You just told me to get a Chromebook. The pathetic absurdity of that final detail, the Chromebook, hung in the air between us. Jessica looked at me, really looked at me for the first time, and I saw something in her eyes shift. The anger was gone, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. The sister she saw across the table wasn't a cold, judgmental monster. It was just me, her sister, and I was in trouble, and she was the one who had put me there. The aftermath of the great dinner table detonation was not peace. It was a fragile, exhausted truce. There were no hugs. There were no grand apologies. But the fighting stopped. The next few days were a blur of damage control. I spent hours on the phone with the data recovery service. The news was grim. The impact had shattered the solid-state drive's controller chip. They could try a clean room recovery, they said, but the chances were slim and the cost would be astronomical. It was a gamble. I couldn't afford ... The 12 hours of work were gone forever. I had to start from scratch on the manuscript. Working 18-hour days on my small, slow backup laptop, my eyes burning, my back aching. Every word I typed was a bitter reminder of the word I had already typed and lost. My productivity was a fraction of what it normally was. The deadline, once tight, was now impossible. Meanwhile, the war of texts and emails with my sister and her husband escalated. Tom, now fully engaged, took the lead. His messages were a masterclass in gaslighting and financial intimidation. Kate. One text read, Jess showed me the invoice. This is insane. We're not paying it. You can't seriously be trying to extort your own family. I replied with a screenshot of the bill for the replacement laptop. It's not extortion. Tom, it's reimbursement. He replied almost immediately. We're willing to offer you $500 as a gesture of goodwill. That's more than fair for a used computer. Take it or leave it. $500. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my chest. It wasn't a used computer. Tom, it was a professional workstation. Your offer is insulting. His next message was more menacing. Look, Kate, you need to be realistic. We don't have $4,000 just lying around. And even if we did, no judge in the world would make us pay that for a broken laptop. If you want to get legal about it, be my guest. We'll see you in small claims court. He was calling my bluff. He was betting that I wouldn't have the stomach to actually sue my own sister. And he was probably right. But the threat of it, the casual way he threw it in my face, was infuriating. The only person who seemed to understand my position was my friend. Eleanor was a graphic designer, another freelancer who understood that our equipment wasn't just a toy. It was our entire business. We met for coffee and I laid out the whole sordid tale, parenting classes. She said, her eyes wide over the rim of her mug. Oh, Kate, that is a Hall of Fame passive-aggressive power move. I'm impressed and terrified. It felt right at the time. I sighed ... Now I'm not so sure. My entire family is treating me like I'm a monster. Are you kidding me? She said, putting her cup down. You are not the monster here. The monster is the 8-year-old who smashes a laptop, and the parent who lets it happen and then refuses to pay for it. You did what you had to. Do. You set a boundary. They didn't like it. That's their problem, not yours. My mother says I should just forgive the debt to make peace. I told her. Eleanor snorted. Easy for her to say. It's not her $4,000. Let me ask you something. If I came to your house and my hypothetical, badly behaved kid smashed your laptop, what would you expect me to do? I'd expect you to apologize profusely and write me a check for a new one immediately. I said without hesitation. Exactly. She said, pointing at me ... because we're responsible adults. The fact that it's your sister doesn't change the equation. It makes it worse. She's taking advantage of your relationship to get out of her responsibilities. Don't you dare back down. You're not just fighting for a laptop. You're fighting for professional respect. Her validation was a balm on my frayed nerves. It reinforced my conviction. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a monster. I was a professional woman demanding to be treated as such. The world of my family, with its messy emotions and its unwritten rules of obligation and guilt, was trying to suck me under. Eleanor's clear-eyed, logical support was a lifeline back to the world I understood. The world where actions have consequences, and those are meant to be paid. The email from my client's legal department arrived on a Tuesday. It was written in cold, unambiguous language. My failure to deliver the edited manuscript by the contractual deadline constituted a material breach. They were reserving the right to pursue all available remedies, including, but not limited to, the recovery of the advance paid to me and damages incurred as a result of the publication delay. I read it 3 times. My blood ran cold. This had moved beyond a family squabble. This was a real, career-threatening legal problem. The penalty clause I had so cavalierly mentioned to Jessica was no longer a hypothetical. It was a looming financial guillotine. The potential damages could be 5 times the cost of the laptop. I forwarded the email to Eleanor. Her reply was immediate. Oh, shit. Kate, you need a lawyer? Now. I found one through a freelance guild I belonged to. Her name was Ms. Albright, and she was a pragmatic, no-nonsense woman who specialized in publishing contracts. I explained the situation to her over the phone. So, the core of the issue is the lost work on the failed hard drive? She asked. Yes, I confirmed. The initial edit was backed up, but the final intensive 12-hour pass was not. That's the work that's taking me so long to recreate. And, do you have professional liability insurance? She asked. No, I admitted. feeling a fresh wave of stupidity wash over me. It was one of those things I had always meant to get around to. She sighed, a long, weary sound. Okay, dot slash slash. First, let's address the client. I will draft a letter explaining the situation, an unforeseen and catastrophic hardware failure, and propose a new, realistic delivery date. We will offer a small reduction in your fee as a gesture of goodwill. We need to show that you are taking this seriously and making every effort to mitigate their damages. This usually works, usually. And if it doesn't, I asked, dreading the answer, then we fight it. But it will be expensive and ugly dot slash slash. Now, about the cause of this hardware failure, a niece, you said. Yes, I replied, my 8-year-old niece. And her parents are refusing to cover the cost of the machine. They've offered $500. Ms. Albright was silent for a moment. This is a family matter, and I don't typically get involved in those. She said dot slash slash, but from a purely legal standpoint, they are liable for the actions of their minor child, their refusal to make. You holds the direct cause of your current professional predicament. You have a very strong case against them in small claims court for the cost of the machine. Document everything, every email, every text. Keep a log of your loss. Work hours. If you want to pursue it, you will likely win. I hung up the phone with a sense of grim clarity. The situation had been distilled down to its legal essence. Liability, damages, mitigation dot slash my family, who accused me of being cold and transactional, had created a situation that could only be resolved with the cold transactional logic of the law. That evening, my father called. He was the last holdout, the one I hadn't heard from directly. His approach was different from my mother's emotional pleas or Tom's aggressive, blustering. He was a man who believed in quiet backroom solutions. I opened my new cheap temporary laptop, my emergency backup, which I now had to use for my actual work, and drafted an email. The subject line was invoice for damages. Weekend of July 5th. I attached the itemized bill, a precise and irrefutable list of the costs her daughter had incurred. The total was just over $4,000. And then I did something else, something petty and passive-aggressive and deeply, deeply satisfying. I opened a new browser window and searched for parenting classes, positive discipline, setting boundaries. I curated a list of the top 5, complete with links, schedules, and costs. I added a second attachment to the email, parentingresources.pdf. I wrote a single line in the body of the email for future reference. I stared at the screen for a full minute, my finger hovering over the send button. This was a declaration of war. This was a line from which there was no retreat. I hit send. The explosion was not immediate. It took 3 hours. 3 hours in which I imagined the email was opened, read and processed through various stages of disbelief and outrage. I used the time to contact my client, the author of the 600-page manuscript, and explain that due to a catastrophic hardware failure, I would be missing our deadline. Her response was, to put it mildly, not understanding. She was a formidable woman who did not tolerate excuses. The professional consequences were already beginning to cascade. My phone rang at precisely 2:17 p.m. The caller ID was Jessica. I let it ring twice, took a sip of water, and answered with a calm, simple, hello. You have got to be kidding me, Jessica shrieked, her voice a raw nerve of fury. There was no preamble. A bill? An invoice? Like I'm some deadbeat client? And parenting classes? How dare you? How dare you, Catherine? Is any of the information on the invoice incorrect? I asked, my tone deliberately detached. I tried to be as accurate as possible. This isn't about accuracy. She yelled dot slash slash. This is about you being a cold, cruel, heartless bitch. My daughter is 8 years old. She made a mistake. And you send me a bill for $4,000 and a list of classes as if I'm the worst mother in the world. I didn't say you were the worst mother in the world. I replied calmly, dot slash slash. The list was merely a suggestion based on observable outcomes. I thought you might be open to a new approach. The sarcasm, light as a feather, landed like a ton of bricks. I could hear her sputtering on the other end of the line. I can't believe you. I truly cannot believe this is who you are. You have always looked down on me, dot slash slash, on my life. On Tom, on my children. You sit up there in your perfect, sterile little apartment, judging everyone. You have no idea what it's like to have kids, to have a real family, to have a life that isn't just about you. A real family is one where children aren't allowed to destroy other people's property. I shot back, my own anger finally beginning to surface. A real life is one where you take responsibility for the damage your family causes. Your daughter destroyed my livelihood, Jessica, and you and your husband acted like she'd spilled a glass of milk. You offered me a Chromebook. That's the level of respect you have for me, so yes, I sent you a bill because this is the real world, and in the real world, actions have consequences. It's just a stupid computer, she screamed. It's my job. I screamed back, my voice finally cracking. It's how I pay for this perfect, sterile little apartment that you and your chaotic family were so happy to camp out in for free all weekend. It's the reason I'm now about to be sued by a client for breach of contract that stopped her. Sued? She repeated, her voice suddenly smaller. Yes, sued, I said, pressing the advantage. Because the 12 hours of work I did on Saturday, the work that existed only on that hard drive, is gone, and it's going to make me miss a major deadline. So don't talk to me about the cost of a stupid computer. The cost of your daughter's little tantrum is going to be far, far higher than $4,000. There was a choked sound on the other end of the line. You did this to yourself? She whispered, her voice trembling with a venomous, self-pitying rage, dot slash slash. You could have just been nice about it. You could have been a sister, but you had to be. She hung up. I stared at my phone, my hand shaking. The battle lines were drawn. I had been defined as the enemy, the cold, childless, unforgiving monster. And the worst part was, a small, treacherous part of me wondered if she was right. I hadn't been nice. I hadn't been a sister. I had been a creditor. And I had a sinking feeling that I had just invoiced my own family out of my life. The next fret in the war opened up the following evening. A call from my mother. Her role in any family conflict was that of the frantic, ineffective peacekeeper. Her strategy was to smooth over all cracks, to ignore all elephants in the room, and to insist that everything was fine. Even when the house was burning down, Catherine, darling, she began, her voice radiating a forced, cheerful calm. I just had a very upsetting call with your sister. I'm sure you did, I said dryly. She's a mess, Kate. She told me what happened with your computer, and it's just terrible. But she also told me what you sent her, an email with a list of helpful resources. I clarified dot slash slash. Now, darling, my mother said, her voice taking on a gentle, chiding tone. You know that wasn't helpful. That was hurtful. Your sister loves her children more than anything. To imply she's a bad mother. Well, you can understand why she's so upset. What I understand, I said, my patience already wearing thin, is that her beloved child, who she loves more than anything, caused $4,000 worth of damage to my property and Jessica's. Response was to tell me to get over it. Does she love her child more than she loves her sister? It's not fair. My mother protested dot slash slash. It's different. You don't have children. You don't understand the pressure she's under. She has it so hard. Catherine, 2 kids, a mortgage. Tom's job is so demanding. She's doing her best. There it was. the foundational text of my family's doctrine. Jessica has it so hard. It was the universal excuse for every one of my sister's failings, every missed appointment, every forgotten birthday, every piece of bad behavior. Her life was hard, and therefore, she was exempt from the normal rules of adult conduct. And I, with my quiet, orderly, child-free life, was expected to be the designated shock absorber. My life isn't exactly a walk in the park right now. Mom, I said, my voice tight. I'm at a laptop. I've lost days of work. And I'm being threatened with a lawsuit. Who is supposed to make things easier for me? It's just money, Catherine, she sighed, as if that were the simplest thing in the world. Family is more important than money. You need to be the bigger person here. Call your sister, apologize for the email, forgive the debt, just make peace. Forgive the debt, $4,000, just write it off. As if it were a $10 lunch. I felt a surge of anger so hot and so pure it almost choked me. So let me get this straight. I said ... Your solution is for me to absorb the entire financial, professional, and emotional cost of this disaster, and also apologize for being the one who was wronged. Jessica gets to walk away with 0 consequences, and I'm supposed to do it all with a smile just to make peace. You're making it sound so transactional, she complained. This is family. No, I said, my voice shaking with the force of my conviction. This is a transaction. Jessica's daughter broke something that belongs to me. Jessica is therefore responsible for it. That is how the world works. The fact that she's my sister doesn't change the facts. It just makes her refusal to take responsibility all the more insulting. You're being so stubborn, my mother said, her voice turning cold. I don't know why you have to make everything so difficult. I'm not the one who made it difficult, Mom. I replied, I just sent a bill for services rendered, the service of destroying my property. I hung up the phone before she could reply. The conversation had made one thing perfectly clear. In the biased court of my family's opinion, I had already been tried and found guilty. My crime was not cruelty. My crime was refusing to quietly pay the price for someone else's irresponsibility. My apartment is a sanctuary, not in a metaphorical, scented candle and Zen music kind of way, but in a literal dictionary definition sense, a place of refuge and safety. Every object has its place. The books on my shelves are organized by genre, then alphabetically by author. The pens on my desk are arranged by ink color. The coasters are precisely centered on the polished surface of the coffee table. This order is not a quirk. It is the essential operating system for my life as a freelance editor. Authors and publishers don't pay me for my creativity. They pay me for my precision. They pay me to take their chaotic, sprawling manuscripts and impose upon them a sense of structure and clarity. My life is a reflection of my work, or perhaps my work is a reflection of my life. It is for this reason that a visit from my sister, Jessica, and her family is not a joyous occasion. It is a Category 4 hurricane that I am forced to welcome into my home. Jessica, my younger sister, operates on a different plane of existence, a plane fueled by chaos, spontaneity, and a parenting philosophy that seems to be rooted in interpretive dance and the complete absence of the word no. Her husband, Tom, is a good-natured but utterly spineless enabler, and their children, 8-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Leo, are not so much children as they are tiny, sticky agents of entropy. This particular weekend visit was IPUS, and I had been assured an emergency. Their house was being fumigated for termites, a problem they'd neglected for 6 months, until a structural engineer warned them their porch was in danger of imminent collapse. So, for 48 hours, my sanctuary was to become their flophouse. Now, there are just a few simple rules I'd set upon their arrival, trying to keep my voice light and breezy, a tone I am not naturally gifted with. Rule 1, no food. Or drink in the living room or my office. Rule 2, inside voices. Please. Rule 3, my office is completely, totally, 100% off limits. It's where I work, and the equipment is very delicate and very expensive. Jessica had smiled that placating smile of hers. Of course. Kate, don't worry so much. They'll be perfect little angels. The angels lasted approximately 11 minutes. By Saturday afternoon, my apartment looked like it had been ransacked. There were crayon marks on the hallway wall, a sticky residue of what I hoped was juice on my favorite armchair, and the volume level had not dipped below that of a jet engine. I found Leo trying to feed a cheese cracker into the USB port of my printer. I found Lily using my collection of vintage Penguin classics as building blocks. Each time, I would call for Jessica, who would float into the room and say something like, "Oh, sweetie, let's not do that." With all the authority of a gentle breeze, I retreated to my office, the one sanctified space, and tried to work. I was on the final, most crucial edit of a novel for a major publishing house. The author was notoriously difficult. The deadline was razor thin, and the manuscript was a 600-page beast that I had finally, painstakingly wrestled into submission. My laptop, a custom-built machine with a specialized monitor calibrated for extended reading, was the nexus of my entire professional life. It contained not just this manuscript, but my entire client database, my accounting software, and years of archived work. I had backed up the manuscript to the cloud the night before, but I'd done another 12 hours of intensive, line-by-line work since then. That work existed in one place and one place only, the solid-state drive humming quietly inside my machine. The final confrontation happened on Sunday morning, an hour before they were due to leave. I had repeatedly told Lily not to run in the apartment. I was walking out of my kitchen with a cup of coffee when she came tearing down the hallway. Shrieking with laughter, I put out my arm to stop her. "Lily, what did I say about running?" Her face crumpled. A game had been interrupted. "You're not the boss of me," she yelled, her voice a piercing shriek. "Actually," I said calmly, "in this apartment, I am." Her rage, sudden and absolute, was a terrifying thing to behold in a child. She looked around for something to defy me with, and her eyes landed on my open office door. Before I could react, she sprinted inside. I followed, my heart hammering. In my chest, she scrambled onto my desk chair, a tiny, furious goblin, and put her hands on my open laptop. / "Lily, get down from there right now," I commanded, my voice sharp and cold. She looked me dead in the eye, a perfect distillation of her mother's passive defiance and her father's lack of foresight, and shoved the laptop with all her might. It sailed off the desk in a graceful, horrifying arc and landed screen down on the hardwood floor with a sickening crunch that echoed in the sudden silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then Lily, realizing she had finally crossed a line even she understood, burst into tears, but I just stared at the dead machine on the floor. My beautiful, expensive, essential machine, and I felt absolutely nothing but a cold, clear, and focused rage. The immediate aftermath was a masterclass in my sister's particular brand of conflict avoidance. Jessica and Tom rushed into the office. Drawn by the sound of the crash and Lily's subsequent wailing, Jessica scooped up her crying daughter, murmuring soothing nonsense while Tom stared at the carnage on the floor. "Oh, wow," Tom said, with the profound insight of a Zen master. That's broken." "Yes, Tom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "It is." "I'm so sorry, Kate," Jessica said, not looking at me, her focus entirely on her sobbing child. She didn't mean it. She's just tired. It's been a long weekend. It's been a long weekend, as if the duration of their stay was somehow responsible for the destruction of a $3,000 piece of professional equipment. I took a deep, studying breath, fighting the urge to scream. She did it on purpose. Jess, I said, my voice level. She looked right at me and pushed it off the desk. She's a child, Catherine, Jessica snapped, a defensive edge to her voice. She doesn't understand the value of things. It was an accident. It was an act of deliberate defiance, I countered, because she was told no and didn't. Like it. This is what happens when there are no boundaries. This is the direct result of your parenting. I let the word hang in the air, heavy and sharp. Jessica flinched. Tom shuffled his feet. Look, Kate, he said, stepping forward like a reluctant diplomat. Well, we'll chip in for a new one, of course. You can. Get a decent little Chromebook for a few $100 these days. @CHROMEBOOK. He wanted to replace my custom-built editing suite with a glorified tablet for checking email. The sheer, staggering ignorance of the suggestion almost took my breath away. It was the final, clarifying insult. They didn't just fail to control their child. They had absolutely no respect for me, my home, or my career. They saw me as a hobbyist, a dilettante playing at work on her little computer. I think it's time for you to leave, I said, my voice a block of ice. They packed in a flurry of guilty silence. As they were walking out the door, Jessica turned to me, her face a mask of wounded pride. I said I was sorry. I don't know what else you want from me. I want you to take some responsibility, I said, but the words were lost as she swept her children out into the hallway. I closed the door behind them, and the silence that descended was a profound relief. I walked back to my office and gingerly picked up the dead laptop. The screen was shattered, a spiderweb of black glass. The casing was cracked. I pressed the power button. Nothing. It was a brick, a very expensive, career-threatening brick. I spent the next hour in a state of cold, methodical fury. I went to the manufacturer's website and configured an identical replacement machine. I added the cost of the professional software I would need to reinstall. I called a data recovery specialist who quoted me a non-refundable attempt fee that cost more than Tom's hypothetical Chromebook. Then, I did a quick calculation of the billable hours I would lose this week, the penalty clause in my contract, for the missed deadline and the potential damage to my professional reputation.